Welcome back to Well-Behaved Women. I'm Lauren Schill.
And I'm Kyria Phillips. Hey, guys.
It's good to see you again. We've been talking for like 15 minutes, but pretty much the last time we saw each other was on my birthday. So
yeah,
it's been a little while.
Yeah.
Yay, pandemics.
Yay, pandemics. But welcome back, guys. We're going to give you another episode here. We're going to do our best.
The only critique we got last time was that nobody could pay attention. So we're going to
including ourselves. So we understand
5% more focused, but we're also like we're not going to promise anything. Pandemic brain is a real thing. Everyone should know this by now.
Truly.
Okay. On this year in history, the Republic of China was established. New Mexico and Arizona became the 47th and 48th states of the U.S., respectively. The Girl Scouts was founded.
Woo-hoo.
Lawrence Oates, a member of an expedition to the South Pole, leaves a tent saying, "I'm just going outside and may be sometime." And the Titanic sinks.
Oh, all right.
So this is 1912. I really had to put in the Lawrence Oates thing as I was researching the year. Like, what badass last words.
Okay. So he never came back. That was what I was like. I'm fairly certain the end of the story is he never came back, but let me make sure.
Pretty much.
I might be a while or forever. And then he moonwalks out into the South Pole. I don't know. That's how I picture Lawrence.
Have you ever heard the story, The Cremation of Sam McGee?
No.
It's a poem and it's pretty long, but basically it's about this guy who's Sam McGee, and he's hails all the way from Tennessee, but basically they go to this really freaking cold place and he freezes to death, and so then they go and cremate him in like this thing, and someone outside hears him, and so he opens the door and the guy's like, no, this is the first time I've been warm since I left Tennessee. Go away.
I also love that it's Sam McGee from Tennessee. Okay. 1912.
Aoua, and I am going to butcher this. I'm going to just be straight up all of the names here. I will try my best, but I will probably not do very well. Aoua was born in a small town called Bamako, which was part of the French West African territory in the French Sudan.
Okay.
Populated by about 8,000 people at the time. Mali had fallen under French control in the late 19th century, but people were not entirely happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Her father, named Karamogo, had been a hygiene specialist in World War I and is thought to have descended from Sundiata Keita, who helped found the Malian Empire in the 13th century.
Okay, so this is Aoua's father?
This is Aoua's father.
Aoua's father, okay.
So he apparently is kind of descended royalty, and some of the leadership, as we go on, some of the leadership is named Keita as well, and I think it's like different members of that family.
Okay.
Because of that heritage and because of his position as a laboratory worker after the war, he was placed firmly in the upper echelons of society in Mali. So nice. They were like rolling in the society, the highfalutins of the time.
Yeah.
It was common at that point for Malian men to be polygamists. And because Karamogo was fairly wealthy, he kept a household of wives and children that filled 25 apartments.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lot of people to keep track of.
Look out, Brigham Young.
Okay, so we just finished. All right. So we just finished the last podcast series on Mormonism. Like, Gary listened to the whole thing with me, and we would pause it and talk about it, and he'd ask questions, and like he was so fucking involved. And every once in a while he would just like stop and he'd go, "I'm so sorry that this happened to you." It was my heart.
Yeah, it
was hard to listen.
Very wild story.
Yeah, it was hard to listen to some of the episodes, especially when it was kind of an understanding that at any point he could just pause and ask me about these things. But for the most part, it was obviously last podcast is hilarious. So
yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, like, because it is a funny episode and having not been
having no context for it,
having not been personally related to it, like, and then add in the fact that you're like listening to it with your partner to like allow your partner to have a big understanding of where you came from. Like,
that was kind of where he went with that. He wanted to make sure that he was understanding a little bit more about where I came from.
Yeah.
And I feel like it has given him a lot of context. He also said that when I was gone I'm going to a wedding at the end of April. Mm-hmm. And while I'm gone, he's planning on listening to it again, just kind of alone to like reprocess all of it.
Oh, I think that's really lovely.
I know. Seriously, my heart has been so full because these last 3 weeks, because I mean, it took us 3 weeks to do it, but
mm-hmm.
It's been so fucking validating. And like, yes, these people are crazy, but you are not crazy anymore.
Yeah.
You're doing pretty well. So.
Yeah, it's, the girl that I sent you on TikTok, people were like in her comments, like, you're dumb for believing in it. She's like, I was born there. Like, that mm-hmm. is the people who loved me, the people or that I thought loved me, the people that I loved, the people that I trusted to teach me about the world told me that was the answer. Like, mm-hmm. What do you want from people? Like, if we don't know it, if you're a child, what do you want from me? She's like, when I got older, of course, like, yes, I started like exploring further, but when you're brought up in it, and especially when you're brought in it very closely, and then the outside world also looks at you like you're crazy and doesn't welcome you, how do you leave? Like, it's so hard.
I think if I had stayed in Georgia, I probably would have left earlier, mm-hmm. but because I went to BYU, I went from kind of being considered like, there's the in Utah Mormons and then there's the Utah Mormons. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of went from like a non-Utah Mormon kind of, we'd go out to restaurants on a Sunday and it was a big deal. We drank soda with caffeine in it and oh my goodness. And my curfew was 11 p.m. if I was going to a stake dance, which is a church dance, by the way. Yeah. But then I went from that world into Utah Mormon world, which is you got to get married. And you got to pop out a lot of babies.
Yeah.
And if someone proposes to you, you got to say yes.
Yeah. It's bananas. Like, and everybody who's not Mormon is like, the Mormons are crazy. And then like when they hear about like young adults, I'd say like people in their early 20s that are Mormon or whatever, or they meet them, I think that some of like the shitty people in the world, that their first instinct is to be like, oh yeah, it's terrible out here. We eat live chickens. And it's like, don't fucking do that. Like, because that's what people are told inside of these, not literally that, but like they're told that you're heathens out here inside of these entities. And so they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything. You're not helping anyone by trying to make them think it's a terrifying world outside of the church, because they're already fucking told that.
Yeah. Like drinking coffee made someone a bad person. Like drinking alcohol made someone a bad person in that lens.
Yeah.
And it just seemed so arbitrary. And the more I learned about it while I was in it, the more I kind of called it out. Like, hey, well, wait a minute. All of these guys drank. And
I was trying to piece together coffee and hot beverages versus hot chocolate. And I was like,
oh my God, I had this conversation with Mary. So when we were listening to this, this is true. So when I first moved to Tulsa, I went on a date with this guy. And he picked me up at my studio apartment and said that it was about the size of his third bedroom in his house.
Jesus Christ.
So it started out really well, obviously.
Yeah, he's like, wow, you're poor.
I am. So he took me somewhere nice. We went to Olive Garden. And he didn't want to, I ordered a Dr. Pepper, had caffeine in it, and I got called out. And I was like, well, what about hot chocolate? And he goes, well, hot chocolate doesn't have caffeine. And I said, chocolate has way more caffeine than like a glass of soda. It didn't matter. it was a specific policy because Mormons love hot chocolate. We would never be able to get rid of that thing.
Right. But like, so from my understanding, I thought that like the thing with hot coffee was it's like, yes, caffeine, but also the fact that like it's been heated and that's not like ideal for your body, but it's fine with hot chocolate.
Exactly. Like now you're getting it, Kyria.
Yeah. I was like reading it and I was like, you know what? I'm tired.
I am sleepy now. Okay. I'm done.
I'm too tired to be a Mormon. Like they couldn't pay me enough to do it. I'm too sleepy to follow all the rules.
Okay. The last, I want to say like 2 years of college, I was just sleepy. I was on Xanax and Klonopin every day. And I zombied my way through the end of college.
Yeah.
It was doctor prescribed, which was crazy. Yeah. Like I didn't want all of this, but I thought a doctor's going to be giving me responsible prescriptions.
Yeah.
Nope.
Jesus. Okay. Thanks for coming to our TED Talk on Mormonism, you guys.
Fantastic.
Aoua.
Mm-hmm. Aoua.
I'm sorry. Is Aoua a woman?
Aoua is a woman.
Okay.
Aoua.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm trying my best to pronounce that correctly, but I might be wrong. Karamogo, her father, he was fairly wealthy and he kept a household of wives that filled 25 apartments. So Aoua grew up with dozens of half brothers and sisters. Dozens. Aowa's mother, Miriam Coulibaly, quote, came from the village of Kajuga on the Ivory Coast, unquote. She spoke the Diola dialect, and she held a traditional view of women's roles in society, believing that men were superior and should be in charge of all political, social, and economic decisions.
Jesus.
That's how we want our women
to feel.
Super subservient. I love it. She taught Aoua that the only political role a woman should exercise was to pass along advice to a brother, husband, or son in confidence, and then only if she were asked.
Jeez.
So her mother also, what'd you say?
Early 1900s.
Yeah. It was a great time in history.
I mean, meanwhile, Rose is on the Titanic.
Mm-hmm. I'm flying.
Paint me.
Okay, did you ever watch those 30-second bunny videos that they made of like all the classic movies?
Bunny?
Yes. So someone on the internet made like Jaws in 30 seconds, but it's with bunnies. Alien in 30 seconds, but it's with bunnies. Gremlins in 30 seconds, but it's with bunnies, and they made a Titanic. And so now every time I think of that stupid fucking movie, I think of the bunny that's just standing there. Never let go.
I really enjoy that movie.
I do too.
It's very long, but I love it for what it is.
Yeah. The soundtrack is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. The score is fantastic. Anyway, Aoua, very surprisingly, her mother also just didn't believe in education for women. If you're not going to talk, why should we educate you?
Yeah, fair point. Jeez, Louise, though.
She basically said, nobody is supposed to educate my daughter. But Karamogo, being the feminist that he was insistent that all his children go to school.
I love that he was a feminist with like a bunch of wives and stuff.
Oh, I don't know if he was a feminist. I was making a joke right there.
Oh. I was like,
how progressive of this man with however many wives to send all of his children to school, no matter.
I mean, yes, like still progressive for sure. Progressive. But I thought you were like, yeah, he calls himself a feminist. And I was like, damn. That's amazing.
That's what was passing for feminism back then.
Yeah, in Mali. It's my kids go to school. Feminism.
Obvious. obviously. That makes sense. So she got to go to school. She was sent to a fairly new school, one that was aimed at educating mixed race girls. It was very exclusive, so Aoua was lucky to get in. In that and in secondary school, she excelled. She graduated at age 16 in 1920.
Wow. I'm so sorry if you mentioned this and I missed it. Is she mixed race? Because her mother a French woman?
I think her mother was a French woman. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Miriam Koulibaly.
Okay, yes, you did. I remember hearing that, and then it flew out of my brain, and so I was like, what?
But she's also from the Ivory Coast, so that's also in Africa. So I'm really not sure. That's a good question, and I do not have a good answer, so I'm going to say no quoting me. I don't know. I have no idea.
Don't use us for a research paper, nerds.
Obviously. So she graduated at age 16 and even educated. There were still expectations of her as a woman that differed greatly than the expectations of men.
Oh, I bet.
In the Mali culture, especially in an elite family like the Keita family, self-discipline was absolutely key to survival. Feelings were discouraged, and you were to be in control at all times, even from childhood. Like Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I was going to say like Vulcans, but yeah.
Vulcans as well, sure. Yeah.
So it's fine.
I love it. Moreover, women were to be the submissive type, like we said before, and not the fun kind. She was expected to...
Wink.
Wink, wink. We're sex positive here.
Yeah.
She was expected to get married and to be the quiet type, to remain the quiet type.
Mm-hmm.
So she graduated and that should have been it, but Karamogo was insistent that she continued her education, so she went to the only school that would allow women at that time.
Such a fucking feminist, this guy.
Right. The only school that was available at that time was a midwifery school.
I love it.
I know. I knew you would.
Especially like African midwifery. It was in Africa still? Mm-hmm. Okay. African midwifery. Like, oh. I'm so sorry. Okay. To our listeners, the 5 of you, to the 2 of you who don't know, I am a doula.
Woohoo! So she moved away from her home and she went to a coastal city called Dakar. She studied for 3 years and graduated in 1931 with a degree. Another fucking rarity at that point in Africa.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So unlike me in my education, she actually put her degree to good use. She went to work for the colonial government and they stationed her in a tiny little town called Gao.
Okay.
So she was in a remote part of Africa and medical technology was pretty much non-existent in 1931 in Africa. Although Gao had once been a major metropolitan area, on the collapse of the Songhai Empire. Jesus, I cannot say that word. Songhai. Jesus Christ. Songhai Empire.
Whoop, whoop. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In the late 16th century, this town fell into obscurity. So by the late 19th century, it was only a village of about 300 huts. And it stayed that way until French colonial rule.
Okay.
It was starting to grow by the time Aoua showed up, but it was still very, very small. Mm-hmm. In my notes, it says itty bitty.
Itty bitty. What was she sent there to do?
Be a midwife.
Oh, okay.
And she fucking...
From the government?
From the government.
So interesting. I hate medicine now. Like, how amazing that there's government appointed midwives in the fucking 30s.
You're going to get stationed out in this little fucking nowhere spot where people need you the most.
Yeah. Like, you have... And I mean, I'm sure... No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, actually. Like, there's community-funded midwifery and doula services, but there's nothing government-supported anywhere in the U.S. that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
So it's just I just love community medicine. Anyways, go ahead. I'm so sorry. I just had to...
This is why we need universal health care.
I love it.
doctors and midwives and doulas need to be government employed. Doulas, no, but government employees. But you should have those kinds of protections at least.
Yeah.
Anyway. So she worked a lot. Traditional midwives at the time relied heavily on oral educations and folklore, and the death rate was pretty high. Aoua was new, and she was ready to make a difference. So let's talk about the history of, is it midwifery or midwifery?
Wifery.
Midwifery. Yeah. It's got...
I don't know why, but...
I don't know.
Like, I don't understand the, like, English reasoning behind it, but I have only ever heard it pronounced, like, midwives, midwife, midwifery. So...
I'm playing badminton suddenly.
yeah. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
This is my wiffle.
Yeah.
All right. So around the world, it's all got different names, but it's one of the oldest recognized female professions and a highly respected one at that. Midwives could publish medical findings with the citation of male doctor colleagues. And they obviously delivered babies, but they were also relied on in the community in basically just all order of women's bodies, helping to recover mothers' bodies postpartum, gynecological exam, and especially rape investigations.
Wow.
Yeah. They became the women's specialist. They were Planned Parenthood for,
the time period and the location. Yeah. That's lovely.
Exactly. So she learned at that point to speak the Songhai dialect, but people were still pretty wary of outsiders, and especially ones that had such progressive views on emancipation and medicine. She was not afraid of using medicine, and all of a sudden that was witchcraft.
Yeah.
She was also very young, and the wisdom of the time was that your best chance for a midwife was an older woman with plenty of years of experience under her metaphorical birthing belt. I would imagine you're probably struggling with that type of thing as well, like getting into your career. So most doulas and midwives tend to do some of their services for free and whatnot, like when they first start out, just because like word of mouth is what will get you around, and then like do discounted, like I'll probably do 2 to 3 free births and then 2 to 3 discounted ones before I'm charging like the actual rates I want to be charging. Right. But it's like building your portfolio.
Yeah. I have never attended a birth in a professional capacity before. So like right now there's not, like I've been to Jennifer's, but that was not in a professional capacity. So right now, like marketing myself is definitely just marketing myself on like, please have faith in me.
Let me help you through this time. I promise I'll be good at it.
Yeah, no, and now I can.
I got a piece of paper. I got it. Let me show you.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that like I admire midwives and stuff, but that's not the path I chose because like to be a midwife now, it's like you have to have a nursing degree and then like a 4 or a 6 year, like not just a 2-year nursing degree. And doulas are really just like emotional support. Like I don't do anything medical at all. And so
which is nice.
Yeah. And so I don't have to sell anyone on having faith in my medical skills, which is nice. I really just have to sell people on having faith in like our bond. So it's really like, I really need to get my website up. Anyways.
As a reminder. So she basically took that time to kind of reconsider what was, how to gain their trust. She wanted to figure out how to get to these people and allow them to open up to her. So she realized there was another way to connect and gain their trust, and that was clothing. Everyone needed clothing, and it wasn't the most accessible village. So she learned to sew, and she got pretty good at making clothes.
Neat.
Yeah. So as she got better, the locals took notice, and eventually she kind of just earned their trust, and then they started coming to her. And so she started asking to be present at births, not to run them, just to actually be present and help if needed.
Great.
And then as time went on, she became very well known for her skill in handling difficult birth cases. Her skills were standing alone, like started standing kind of on their own, which helped her stay very,
speaking
very
for
busy in that
themselves.
area. Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest issues Aoua had to overcome was the tribal folkloric beliefs in medicinal procedure. Her goal was to synthesize modern medical practices with traditional cultural custom, and she learned that a great deal about indigenous beliefs and procedures surrounding childbirth, although some women continued to reject sterile techniques, considering them unnecessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are people who give birth even nowadays who will really, 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 really risk a lot to not have any intervention of like a medical kind, and it's difficult.
I will not be one of those people.
Yeah, and it's
doctors are there for a reason.
Yeah, and if there's a medical professional present and things go wrong, and it's my understanding if things go wrong and the patient becomes like unresponsive, I can then like take action and do transfer and stuff like that. But as long as the patient is telling me no, I don't think, me as a doula can't do anything, but I don't think like even in Western medicine, I don't think you can interfere.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but if there's medical professionals listening, you can let me know.
Exactly. She described the social delicacy of the situation when she wrote, "How can we act to combat and eliminate certain customs and manners without being criticized by the people whose support we so badly need to reach our objectives?" We can't get rid of these things when every time we say something to the people that need to affect change, you don't hear us. Her home in that area became kind of a hub for people. She said that every day during cold season, her home became full of civil servants, nobles, and merchants alike. Because colds are the great equalizer, truly. No one looks good with snot running down their face and all their hair knotted. At all. Nobody. And
everybody needs warm clothing.
Everyone needs warm clothing. Exactly. So she is kind of now this go-to human, but she was really just good at bringing people together, and that was kind of a tool that she would end up using for the rest of her life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was common in the French Sudan at the time to have arranged marriages, but she was part of this generation that was, for the very first time in that area, starting to marry for love.
Oh.
Yeah. While working in Gao, she met and fell in love with Dr. Dauda Diawara. He was a medical doctor that she worked with often, and just as importantly, Dauda sparked her interest in politics.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. They married in 1935 and spent their years working in the most remote villages of Gao, Dakar, Tougan, and Niger, introducing hygienic measures to their inhabitants.
Yeah.
We're going to hold hands and we're going to give out medical supplies. We're going to teach people how to be safe.
Yeah, we're going to introduce you to like brushing your teeth. I had no idea how like I know that like brushing your teeth is important, but I had no idea like how dangerous gum disease could actually be until like recently. Like apparently it's like people are like seriously brush and floss your teeth because if you get an infection, it's so close to like all of this stuff. So if you get an infection, it can travel so much quickly, and you can like really fuck your brain up, I guess. Right?
Not good.
Ooh. I was like, I have more things to be scared of now.
I need to go to the dentist. Fuck that person in particular.
Yeah. I was like, well, thanks for that information.
Yeah. Way to make my day.
But I had to share it with you too, so I can't be alone.
I appreciate it. I also hate you.
Yeah.
Tradition stated at that time that an older woman witnessed the first coital occurrence in the marriage to make sure that they do it right.
Okay.
I don't know. Like in Jewish culture, like there used to be kind of a cloth. They'd made sure that she bled or whatever.
No, I mean, I know.
I get it.
But also, okay.
Right. They were also there, and this is the skeevy part. They were also there to help assist the groom in case the bride resisted.
Oh. Mm. But these ones married for love are our subjects?
Yes.
Okay.
When Dagnuma, a female relative, showed up on their wedding night to do her duty, Dauda, her new husband, was like, fuck no.
Dauda.
Yeah, Dauda. He put the woman out the door, and he created a scandal that exposed that young couple to severe criticism. He was like, nope, we are not doing that.
Yeah.
And just dealt with all of the fallout.
Yeah, like, fuck it. It's not your business.
It isn't. It's Nunya.
Wow.
Elsewhere in the world. So Iceland legalizes abortion on medical grounds. Mm-hmm. A race riot breaks out in Harlem, New York, after a rumor circulates that a teenage Puerto Rican shoplifter in the S.H. Crescent Company department store has been brutally beaten. This is not important to the story, but I found it wildly entertaining. A guy named Huey Long of Louisiana gave the longest speech on Senate record, lasting 15 and a half hours and containing 150,000 words. We might have like passed that with the trillion, like the last stimulus step.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had to read that thing in its entirety.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but way to go, Huey Long.
Way to go. The Nazi Party.
I don't know what you were filibustering. Maybe it was a shitty thing, but you know.
Let's hope. The Nazi Party is coming out in full force, starting with the public acknowledgement of the Luftwaffe and just rolling downhill from there. Mm-hmm. Abyssinia, what we now call Ethiopia, was not a very old state nation thing. And in the late 19th century, as it was being formed, Italy had tried twice to take control of that area. Wow. They had failed twice, but in 1935, this year, a cocky bastard named Benito Mussolini decided that it was his turn to have a go.
You don't say.
Yeah. So things had changed since the last two attempts, namely planes and machine guns. Mm-hmm. Italy had them, Abyssinia, not as much. Mm-hmm. So they decided to attack it and had quite a bit of success. As the attacks rained down on Abyssinia, attentions were turned to the way that Europeans had treated African nations, especially in the ways in which they had repeatedly exercised control through death and terrorism and fear-mongering. Mm-hmm. Boy, was there a lot of death.
Boy, was there many of death and fear-mongering.
Boy, were there so many fear-mongers in things. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, Europe definitely absolutely fucked Africa. Like,
just over and over and over again with the claw end of a hammer, just all, ugh.
Yes.
Horrible.
We do not have enough time in our lives, I don't think, to detail the atrocities that occurred in Africa at the hands of Europeans. But there's a couple.
1 or 5 jillion.
Yeah, this Mussolini guy. So Italian fascism was just one more form of European control. It was one more way in which the African people were put down in a seemingly endless fucking stream of abuses. So Aoua and Dauda were not about that life, and mm-hmm. they resolved to be part of the movement that would change their home forever. Mm-hmm. Were they still, I'm so sorry, their area was still controlled by France?
Yes, I think that they were still in that French area and they were just going from little towns to towns.
Okay.
Up until 1944, a married woman wishing to work in a profession had to get her husband's permission to do so. A decree changed that, requiring now only that any woman wishing to work should be able to read, write, and speak French fluently. This would be a complete game changer, but also, with most good things, it took a lot of time to become fully integrated. When the African Democratic Assembly was founded in 1946, they joined immediately, Aoua and Aoua.
Okay.
The political ideology of the party did not endorse outright secession of colonies from France, but it was anti-colonial and pan-Africanist in its political stance. So I had to look this up. I'm going to explain it to you.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know this, but I am just barely learning all of these things.
No, it's okay.
So,
go for it.
Pan-Africanism is a worldwide movement that aims to encourage and strengthen bonds of solidarity between all indigenous and diasporan ethnic groups of African descent.
Okay.
They encourage unity between everyone because they all share not only a common heritage, but a common destiny. And in the efforts to gain independence from European rule, they had to unite themselves under this ideal that through these values, Africans would one day finally be in control of their own lands.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's kind of Pan-Africanism. So while this party is, new, it's on the rise, Aoua is part of the inception, and she's part of the growth as it is kind of blowing up. And she was uniquely situated by virtue of her position. But seriously, by virtue of her position, she was uniquely situated as a mouthpiece directly to the women of the community.
Yeah.
So she was able to kind of get everything out to them. She was a well-trusted name throughout much of small-town French Sudan. And as she had saved countless lives through hard work and introducing hygienic practices, the people loved her.
Yeah.
They were all about it. So she told them that this was the party to be a part of. They were going to fucking listen and learn. And their election in 1946 was the first in which women were allowed to vote. The Democratic Assembly Party was formed and ran for control in the same year. They didn't win, but were popular enough to gain more international attention. The group was formed during this political conference aimed at uniting African leaders affiliated with French socialists and African leaders affiliated with French communists. Mm-hmm. Through the union, the relationship between France and the African colonies would be reconfigured with gaining independence in the colonies. That was their goal.
Okay.
We want our own lands. We're going to work with you however we need to and reconfigure all these lands so that they're our own. Mm-hmm. In France, the Socialist Party decided that the colony was undermining their relationship. And so they forced the members of their party to withdraw from the assembly, which meant that the remaining members of the party also happened to be communist. And so that was where it leaned for the rest of its existence under the leadership of Felix Houphouët-Boigny. Yeah, who was from the Ivory Coast.
Okay.
So basically the only socialist in the group to kind of help even everything out.
Yeah. Were made to withdraw.
They're like, nah, we're not.
Yeah.
So that led to communist appointments within the assembly, and the organization eventually just alienated a lot of delegates. Mm-hmm. It eventually got so divisive that the delegates split off and formed an entirely new party called the Independence Outre-mer, or Overseas Independence. Mm-hmm. While Aoua had always supported Aoua in her goals, publicly he did not want to defy social convention and expected her to be submissive and agreeable when out of their home.
Oh. But he threw the lady out of there? Whatever.
But he threw the lady out.
Aoua, come on, I was cheering for you.
Right?
We were all rooting for you.
We wanted you. If something said someone really sexist, he wouldn't call them on it, and she wasn't allowed to either. We all know about that. We've all been there.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, nowadays still, sometimes.
2021, guys.
Aoua. Okay.
So, obviously, this was not Aoua's dream state, but she also understood the kind of backlash that they would face if she pressed the issue and decided that it was a worthy sacrifice in pursuit of her larger goal towards equality. But it was also a blow to her ego and to their relationship. Mm-hmm. What was more, Aoua learned that she herself could not have children.
No.
This was devastating in a number of ways. First, obviously, that's a sad discovery if what you want is a family. Mm-hmm. In this situation, it was expected to have children, so the rest of the family is also sad for you, and for the children, it sucks all around.
Yeah.
There's just no good part of that unless you just don't want kids. But even that, I mean, it's still kind of like a part of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even
People
if
always know.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't want kids, even knowing, like, finding out that you can't and then having, like, society know that you can't, like, it's like, well, shit, I didn't really want them, but I also didn't want these motherfuckers to, like, think I'm broken.
Yeah, which is pretty much what happens.
Yeah.
There is something wrong. There's something wrong
with her. Yeah.
With her. Yes, exactly. Dowda's mother was real upset by this development. Her son had decided when he married Aoua that he would not be a polygamist, despite the fact that it was common practice at that time.
Yeah.
So when he stood by their decision of monogamy, even after learning of Aowa's condition, the mother placed a curse on the couple.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I wouldn't want to stick around after being cursed.
Yeah, like to try to get them to break up, or like to kill them, or okay.
To be cursed, I would say probably with unhappiness, not being around, but either way it worked. Yeah. Aoua left and the couple divorced in 1949.
Okay.
Dowda refused to marry again for a really long time, which pissed his mother off even more. Good for Dowda. And Aoua would maintain contact with his extended family, and I even raised 2 of his nieces.
Jeez.
Yeah. At some point, Aoua remarried a man named Mahamane Alassane Haidara, who served as a senator for Sudan in the French National Assembly for like 17 years.
Wow. Okay.
He's a career politician.
Yeah.
Far from being ostracized in her community, she was a well-known figure by that time, and now she didn't have to stand in Dowda's shadow. She was stationed again to Gao in 1950, and then a place called Nara, which was just as remote, in 1951. Her anti-colonial activism clashed with her status as an employee of the colonial government.
Yes.
Which is a surprise to 0 people.
Right.
So the government kind of took their revenge by isolating her more and more, sending her to more and more just fucking remote locations.
Super remote, yeah.
Send you to farthest away that we can possibly send you. So she quit. She quit all of it. She renounced her French citizenship in 1951. She campaigned for the RDA She campaigned for an RDA in the same year when it won 3 parliamentary seats. Woo-hoo. She rose through the ranks of the party, the whole while advocating for women's rights. Furthermore, she wanted to advocate for this positive change without forgetting and respecting the traditions of their shared history. She was determined, as she said, not to, quote, overturn our traditions, because it is on these traditions that our African society is based. So according to this article that was very roughly translated from French, because my sources were very limited on this. It's based on Wikipedia and then all of these other articles that I had to translate and then use high context for them. Yeah. She led the electoral campaign with the help of the women in the city, because leading up to the elections, the male frontrunners of the U.S. RDA all somehow got transferred away from Bamako.
Okay.
Left. All of them. In 1957, all her hard work paid off. Along with her associate Aissata Sow, she founded the Union of Salaried Women in Bamako, which helped give a voice to women in the political world. She helped establish the Federation of Black African Workers, which represented African workers of both sexes. And despite the very obvious sexism in the community and political world, the union hoped to work towards peaceful equality, which is something I guess all of us are still, quote unquote, working
towards. Yeah.
She was the only female member of the Bureau. She helped form the Bamako Women's Bureau, which was another political vehicle for presenting the interests of women to the U.S. RDA party. They were successful in their goals, and so the U.S. RDA added these goals as part of the official party platform.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the 4 goals were: 1, women should participate in the struggle for their country's liberation. 2, women should participate in Mali's economic development. 3, women should be given improved educational opportunities. And 4, women should have access to improved health services.
Yay. Okay. Yeah.
Not that hard.
No, I mean, very reasonable requests.
Reasonable requests. Not that hard. She was also she's just a member of all of these things, all of these unions. So she was a member of the World Federation of Trade Unions. And in the fall of 1958, she was asked to help draft the Constitution when the ill-fated Mali Federation was founded. So the politics and intricacies of the entire African continent and their struggles to break free from colonial rule, or at least redefine the relationship, are just baffling and confusing. There's myriad reasons all of this is still not working out, and it would take way more time than we have to cover it. So briefly, the French Sudan, Senegal, Upper Volta, and Dahomey all decided to form a federation together that would unite the 4 colonies, redefine the role and redefine the role that the French played in their government. So separate themselves into sovereignty. Okay, yeah. They created this brand new political party that would show they were all united in their causes to the French. But all of the people in the founding federation also put themselves in charge of the political party. She was the only woman elected to a position within that federation. Then the political party basically failed to address any of the relevant concerns for any of the nations, and the smaller 2 were basically unrepresented. So in 1960, it collapsed only after 3 months in effect. Jesus. It was very quick. Flash in the pan. So Mali gained its independence in 1960, and she was the only woman elected to the National Assembly and the only woman in party leadership. Jesus. She's it. She often attended international political conferences as a representative and activist. At a meeting of the Women's International Democratic Federation, delegates from the Africa Group suggested a new Pan-African women's organization to, quote, raise international awareness as to the suffering of women in countries struggling for independence. Unquote. She toured the West Africa for the cause, informing political leaders in small regions and big cities and everywhere in between that this new organization existed, which was called the Union of West African Women, or UFOA. Okay. In order to really get up and running, each region needed to mobilize their women. So in 1958, we're going to go back a couple years, but in 1958, the Sudanese Women's Union was founded with Sarah Drop, a local educator. Their first Congress was in the summer of 1959, and they addressed colonialism and women's oppression. African nations were still fighting for freedom, and women were gaining a lot of, kind of a voice to their own lives, finally getting some opinions and allowing them to be heard. Yeah. The goals were to tackle abandonment of families, protections of civil marriage and mutual spousal consent, the elimination of child marriage and polygamy, as well as the immediate prohibition of genital mutilation. Yes. Okay. Yes. Big deal. Very much, yeah. Though we think of those things as obvious and good, immediately after this Congress, the organization and their goals were heavily criticized by all of the USRDA male leadership. Yep. And even by many of the women in the party. They were accused of pushing a bourgeois agenda and undermining intergender relations, which is pretty much the argument that all men have anytime women want to argue for equality. Yeah. You're just damaging our relationships. How dare you want us to treat you the same? No, we don't want to. So in 1962, the marriage code was enacted, and Mali became the first nation in West Africa to secularize the legal framework governing marriage, limit the amount payable by dowry, prohibit desertion and forced marriage, and fix the minimum legal age for marriage at what age? 16. 15. Okay. I mean, that's not great. That's not great. But I said 16 in a hopeful tone that it wasn't 13, and then I got 15, and I was like, okay. That's an acceptable compromise, I guess, in the land of justifications of any sort. Yeah, in the land that I have removed myself from logic, okay. In the land where somehow marrying a child makes sense, yeah, cool. Yeah, super fun. So the activism failed to prohibit polygamy or genital mutilation, but Aoua was clear about her condemnation of both practices for the rest of her life. And genital mutilation is still a huge issue to this day.
Is it still legal?
I don't know if it's legal anymore, but I know that people are still doing it.
Yeah, I did know that it still happened. I wasn't sure if they're... I know less about Africa than I would like to, so I'm not entirely sure on like if they're still practicing it.
This is literally legally. Like my first history lesson in Africa ever. I had the like world history of when you learn about Africa, you learn about Egypt and you learn about South Africa for apartheid.
Right. And you learn about you hear a little about like African colonies when you study like every other European country. But like, I don't think I remember having a segment. Yeah.
There's no segment on African history.
Yeah. Or even just like, because I feel like there's like North African history. And then like there's broken down further than that, you know, like, but I didn't even get like a week long like chapter on like,
basically I know Africa. It exists. Yeah. It existed on a map.
Yeah.
And down here was where white people did horrible things to black people. And up here was pyramids. That's it.
Yeah.
Like those were the only two, and then Djibouti.
Yeah. And then like I learned about Africa in like the slavery context.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, those were the lenses.
But it was,
Africa was
they were brought over from Africa, not any colony, not any like type, just Africa.
Africa. Yeah.
So this is my very first
like deeper dive.
Like toe dip into African history, and it gets very confusing very quickly. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Because of the heavy criticisms that all of these very basic requests made, they eventually stopped meeting. And so the UFOA just ceased to exist.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's great. Around that
time.
So
sad to hear about. Like, it's just like, okay, well, our basic requests are not even being listened to anymore. So
I might as well just give up.
I'm not going to come on Thursdays anymore, guys. I'd rather just have casserole with my family. Like,
instead of continuing to be like existentially upset about all of the shit that I'm fighting for and knowing that I'm going to get ignored every week, I'm just going to stay home and enjoy time with my family because they want me around.
Yeah, like we're going to play Connect 4. Bye. I don't know why.
There's a barbecue going on.
I cannot make the meeting any longer.
So around the same time, since that was kind of petering off, Aoua ran for a seat in the U.S. RDA as a representative from a region outside of Bamako called Sikasso. And she won. In 1962, when the newly formed Republic of Mali. So she was pretty much the only woman deputy elected.
Wow.
They came in at a very turbulent time in the movement toward independence. Mm-hmm. Anti-colonialist values from their first president made it hard to attract Western governments to invest in their nation. Mm-hmm. And any communist aid they had coming in was not enough to sustain the government. It was poor and full of challenges.
Yeah.
As the years went on, the RDA became more and more radicalized. Aoua kept going in spite of that, knowing that the activism towards equality was the best use of her political energy. Mm-hmm. She was appointed head of the drafting committee for the Women's Social Commission, effectively making her a head of the women's wing of the party.
Oh.
Much of Mali was still polygamist, and the president's senior wife, Mariam Keita, had some issues with Aoua.
Senior wife.
Senior.
Yeah. This is my number one wife.
This is my number one wife. My number 7 wife doesn't like her so much, but number 6 is like, fine.
It's fine. It's not a big deal.
That's fine. Mm-hmm. So in the mid-60s, she was forced out of office.
Okay. By another woman.
By a woman that was the wife of the president.
Yeah.
Whatever. During all of this, she had served diligently as a midwife. She had been highly regarded in her career, and she retired from that profession in 1966, probably after saving like hundreds and hundreds of lives.
Yeah.
That's a really long career.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing so many babies.
That's what, like 30, 35 years, something like that.
Yeah.
In 1968, President Modibo Keita, the first president from the Republic of Mali, was overthrown in a coup d'etat and replaced with an incredibly corrupt leader.
Oh, okay.
It became increasingly dangerous to live in Bamako, so she and her second husband, Djime, moved to a place called Brazzaville in the Republic of Congo.
Okay.
I have no clue when they got married.
I thought you mentioned her. Yeah. You mentioned it earlier.
I did mention it. I didn't mention a year. I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
She decided to take that exile as kind of a chance for reflection. So she started working on her autobiography, Femme d'Afrique. Femme d'Afrique.
Oh, okay.
African Woman.
Yeah.
It came out in 1975.
Okay.
In 1979, conditions in Mali were improving as the Congo was deteriorating. So they moved back to Bamako. She died there in 1980 at a time when Mali was still poor and weak. She wasn't able to see equality come to fruition, but she had planted seeds in the hearts of women all over West Africa.
Oh.
Soon after her death, a series of huge public demonstrations were held by those women. All ages participated all over Mali. At the events, police opened fire on the crowds. A number of women died.
Jesus Christ.
By the time the corrupt new leadership was brought down, it was clear that women were going to demand seats at the table of governance. And because we don't know anything about this, I've got one more piece of information. Since then, Mali has been rife with political and militaristic upheaval. Coups and revolts and violence and terrorism have kept this country from accumulating wealth and strengthening international bonds. As of 2014, Mali has some of the worst disparities between men and women in both educational attainment and health. Among the reasons for this are the low literacy rate of women at just 25%.
Jeez.
And the low primary school enrollment rate of 64%. Both among the worst worldwide.
Wow.
Also, women had a healthy life expectancy of just 48 years, among the lowest in the world.
Wow.
Mali was one of just 3 nations where the healthy life expectancy of women was lower than that of men. In 2012, religious extremists briefly seized a large portion of northern Mali before being pushed back by a French-led intervention. In the time these groups occupied the country, they were accused of numerous human rights atrocities against women.
Jesus.
The fight for equality here in the U.S. seems like it's maybe gaining traction, but we are super long way off, and we have it so good here in comparison.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. That's all I got. Aoua Keita, everybody.
Jesus.
I butchered that name over and over and over again.
I looked up a pronunciation of it. You're not that far off. It's a little bit like I listened to it a couple times. It's a little bit harder on the O, like Aoua, like
yeah. I tried to like emphasize it, but it's
But also when you're saying it like quickly and in a sentence, it's I totally yeah.
So that's our episode.
We're
still kind of doing these as we get the energy and as we have the mental ability to actually sit down and do this.
So that's Aoua, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate your support. Hopefully we can meet again soon and record another one. But I hope you guys take care of yourselves in the meantime. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Bye.